Hi everybody, welcome to the Virtual Campus. I'm Emma Bird, I'm the Virtual Campus Programme Director, and I'm delighted to be here today for our really special International Women's Day session. Before we start the session, I'm just going to do a few little housekeeping bits, Marketing Academy updates. So firstly, the US scholarship nominations are open now. So if you know anyone suitable, make sure you nominate them. If you think you might be suitable, check out the selection criteria and get yourself nominated. All of the information on the scholarship program is on the scholarship pages on the US Marketing Academy website. You can also submit your nominations on that same site. There is so much happening on Virtual Campus at the moment. We've got loads of on-demand sessions. So all of the sessions from January and February are now available to watch on demand. These, January, we had a bit of a wellness focus. So we've got Richard Tyler's fireside chat on his battle with cancer. We've got Laura Beckenham, who did a load of mindfulness sessions. We've got Emma Harris's very popular Slow the Fuck Down session. Charlotte Wiseman did a session on positive problem solving. And last week we launched the Better Briefs sessions on demand. So log into the hub and make sure you catch up on those on demand. We've also got a load of live sessions coming up. So next week we have Sir John Hegarty in the Skills Lab with a session talking about creativity. Later in March we have best-selling author Jill Whitty Collins coming to talk about gender equality, closely followed by a self-mastery session with Helen Beedham telling us all to find more time and more energy. So with all that going on, you've just got to log in. Don't miss out. Make sure you register and get your place. So that's the housekeeping done, and over to the main event. So this International Women's Day, the Marketing Academy are delighted to have teamed up with Good Vibes Only Talent to bring you this panel of 3 incredibly inspiring women. In the panel today, we have Mariah Idrissi, the world's first hijabi model, Susannah Townsend MBE OLY, Olympic gold medalist. How cool is that? We have an Olympic gold medalist and one of the nation's top gay rights activists, and Vicky Silverthorn, business owner and solo mum to an adopted daughter. Wow, I'm so excited. I cannot wait for this session. Katie Traxton from Good Vibes Only Talent is here to facilitate this discussion around why our differences are more interesting than our similarities. So ladies, over to you.
Thank you so much, Emma. I'm so glad that you've had us. And also after that rundown of the people that you've had on recently, actually, Emma Harris's session, her husband is one of our tribe at Good Vibes Only Talent as well. I'm really delighted to be able to facilitate these wonderful ladies. I'm going to be saying as little as possible myself to give them as much airtime for their pearls of wisdom. But actually, before we get into your stories, the first question I want to ask is, when was the first time you guys heard of International Women's Day?
Oh, that's a really good question, isn't it? I'm trying to think. I mean, I've got my mother who she had children, had 5 of us, and she stopped work for 20 years. And whilst we were growing up, she didn't go to university at the time. She decided when she was raising us to get masters, to get more degrees. So when she eventually could go back to work, she was in a position to actually get a job that she ultimately deserved. And if I think about the language that was used at home, it's probably around that time that my mother was always talking about it and actually always celebrating it as a family as well. So it's been language in my family, and especially in sport, for a very long time.
Yeah, I think I went to an event actually about 10 years ago. It was a fantastic event. I wish I could remember the name of it, but it was a fantastic event, and it was just full of these unbelievable speakers. And that's when it first sort of really became quite prominent in my head. And from then on, years on, every year, again, it just sticks so much in my head. I really want to know what's going on the day.
I'd say it's been within the time that I've been in this space. Because before that, maybe I just wasn't clocked on to everything going on. But because I guess with my work being so heavily, infused with women's rights and things around that, that's when I really started to be more aware of it. And it's the whole month. It's not, today, but also it's part of a bigger month. So cool.
Yeah, there's Women's History Month now. Yeah, I mean, for me, the first time was actually in Mexico 10 years ago, where I was working on a motorsport event. They brought everyone together from every nation, and I went, oh, we should be doing more of this. Anyway, what we want to achieve out of this session is to bring some inspiration, some empowerment, but also I think the message, because the title is Why Our Differences Are More Interesting Than Our Similarities, and this kind of message that, yes, female empowerment is incredibly important, but also doing it in a way authentic to you, managing to make positive change your way. I think before we start, I would love to hear a little bit about each of your stories. I've actually obviously been lucky enough to hear this before, but I'm always up for another run through. Maria, do you want to start? Tell us, like, how is it you've even come to be sitting here?
Well, in 2015, I was scouted in a children's shop, and I thought, because she was a casting director, my background was more film. That was the space I wanted to get into. So I thought, oh, casting, you know, looking for an actor, great, this is perfect. But she was like, no, actually, I do street casting for like adverts and campaigns. I was like, oh, I was a bit disappointed actually. And then I did it anyway. I took a photo, thought nothing of it. And a few weeks later, she said H&M are doing a campaign and they wanted me in it. I still thought nothing of it because I understand in film, it's like you're just an extra, you know, a bit of cash for the day and that's it. But then when the campaign came out, it was pretty big because apparently I was the first hijab wearing model in the world. And I thought that was insane because it was 2015. My mum was like, yeah, go on, just milk it. You know, you're a model now, that's it. My dad's waiting for me to pay the mortgage. And I'm like, guys, it was one campaign. But I did sign to Select Models, which was also pretty big because there wasn't any really modeling agencies that had like a visibly Muslim woman on their roster. And from there, it's just been like a domino effect. I mean, it's become a lot more normal to see Muslim women in hijab, you know, in all corners of media. So that's really, yeah, how it started from that one campaign.
Can I just say as well, she's being quite humble here. When she says like, oh yeah, the H&M campaign, I think it was in 150 countries that you were basically on all of the stores.
Yeah, it was pretty. I think when I saw like the ad in Times Square and stuff, then I was like, oh, okay, this is big. Do I go back to my part-time job or what do I do? In fact, the owners of that shop actually said, you know, Maria, we think it's time for you to spread your wings. Kind of got ushered out. So yeah.
So from one like amazingly talented but humble woman to another, Vicky, how do you go from a career as a very successful but as a PA to somebody else to actually going, pretty much I'm going to literally create and be part of the inception of an entire industry?
Wow, I like hearing it sounding like that. So yeah, PA. I was a PA for 10 years for professional sportsmen and then a pop star. And I think, you know what, I had a really prominent moment. I remember doing the commute, the London commute. I lived in Putney at the time, doing the London commute. And I remember thinking in my head, imagining it from above looking down, just imagining myself like shuffling along with like hundreds of thousands of other people all shuffling along. And I remember thinking, I can't do this anymore. And cut to sort of a few years later when I had started my business, I got off a train at some random time of the day because I had my own kind of schedule business-wise. And it happened to be, you know, when everyone was coming out of work. And I remember being like one of so few people walking against everyone rushing towards me. And it was like that moment of, oh, yes, this is what I'm meant to be doing. It was just like that difference. I'm going this way. There's 100,000 people all coming towards me, getting on the train, commuting. And it just felt right. So cut to back then, yeah, that's kind of how it started. It was that kind of moment, the shuffling along thing. And I thought, I can't do this anymore. I know I need to own my own business. I know I need to do something different, which took me into a different world of PAing, which then took me into going, right, what do I like doing in life? What part of this PAing do I love doing and which part do I hate doing? And the bit I loved doing was this physical organization of people's spaces, and I saw the happiness it gave people and how it freed their minds and lifted their moods. And then I thought, I could do this as a job. And it didn't really exist that much in the UK. There are a few professional organisers organising homes in the UK, not that many. And I quite liked that I was going to be a bit different, and what I was doing was going to be challenged. And people everywhere, all of my friends, everyone I knew was saying, what are you doing? Are you sure? I kind of thrived off that. And then I started this business, and it just over the years has just gone like this, up and up and up and up, and grown and grown and grown. And it's just been absolutely amazing. So yeah, the world of professional organisers is now huge in the UK. I mean, you see it on every channel now. But I love that I was a part of it when it kind of was just starting out. Absolutely love it.
And then ended up on This Morning, end up with your book, start with your sock drawer, Volkswagen.com multiple times.
Yeah.
Like, stars phoning you up, being like, Vicky, come and sort me out mentally, physically, organise my space.
It's amazing.
Do you know what you said when you're talking about like going against the tide and the shuffling? And kind of reminded me a little bit of a moment I think a lot of people had during the pandemic, where your routine was broken and everybody sort of took a step back and reflected. I'm going to come to Susannah, because actually there was a kind of interesting, I'm going to describe it this way, but you can correct me if I'm wrong. There was this kind of interesting catalyst in 2016 when you go from competing in hockey, where men and women may not be equal, they rarely are in sport, but actually hockey's not a super male sport. People accept that women play hockey. But suddenly in 2016, you get this gold medal, which isn't just, oh, we've got another gold medal, that's great for the tally. It's like a defining moment in British Olympic sport, right? Getting that gold medal is massive. Can you talk to us about what that moment was like, and then what that springboard and that hiatus and what you do with it next was like for you?
Yeah, so interestingly, our coach, everyone thinks that when you win a gold medal, you just celebrate that moment. And to go back a little bit, so the girls, I didn't go to London 2012. I wasn't selected because I simply wasn't good enough, really. And I was very good at attacking, not very good at defending. And a real big life lesson at that point was work on the things you're not very good at. And as a cocky, arrogant youngster growing up, I failed to listen to all of this feedback that I was getting. And the girls I trained for London, didn't go, and the girls went to London and got a gold and got a bronze medal, And from that point on, we talk about values and visions, and you think of how teams can be successful. We were a team that had this vision of gold, but actually we didn't reassess it. We didn't go through it again. We kept this vision for a new squad, for a new group of players. And sometimes, as we all know, we can walk into a meeting, we can do a presentation, and we can mess up. You can go to a hockey game and you can lose through sometimes no fault of your own. It just sometimes happens. And in 2014, we went to a World Cup and we came 11th out of 12th. And for anyone that knows hockey, that's career ending, really. It's funding gone from our sport, but not just that, it's you're not giving every other young boy or girl a chance to compete for their country, because there's a lot of onus on us to do well. And we sat in a room actually and we said, look, if we mess up again, which we can, how can we look in the mirror and still say we've been successful? So we came up with our vision, and this took months to come up with, and we decided to almost not scrap the hockey, but put the hockey to one side, and our vision became inspire the future, be the difference, and create history. And I say that because actually I still live by that vision now, and it was the language we used every single day. So that moment in Rio when we won that gold medal, our coach actually at the end of the game when we won said, let's go from winning to winning. And I remember that so clearly, because winning isn't just defined by that gold medal. Our winning at that point was also defined by thousands of young girls and boys picking up hockey sticks because of it. It was defined by young girls seeing that women can be muscly, sporty, pretty, however you define all of those things. And for that moment from all of us when we got home, it wasn't just about promoting our sports. It simply was about promoting, honestly, a group of people that loved what they do, doing it exceptionally well. And I think when we look at everyone in the world, when they're successful, they tend to have a smile on their face. and then from that they tend to do well with it. So I'm so media trained, Katie. I've barely answered your question. I've answered exactly what I wanted to ask. So.
Well, I think the one thing that's come out, right, in common between the three of you is this sense of being pioneers, of doing something first. So, you know, what you've just described, Susannah, that Olympic gold medal in Rio, it had never been done before. Vicky's kind of stepping into this new industry. It was entirely new. It was a new frontier. There was a lot of potential reward, and you've all seen it, but there was a lot of potential risk as well. And with Mariah being the world's first hijabi model, I mean, that's massive. You're redefining something that hasn't even been defined the first time. And the challenge I just mentioned, the risk and reward, is that when you are the first, when you are the one that steps into the unknown, there can be a lot of obstacles. There can be obstacles that are unavoidable. There can be obstacles that people put up specifically, unfortunately, because of your demographic, because they don't like seeing things that are different, because they don't like change. I'm going to come back to you, Mariah. Like, what was your experience in that area? Was it plain sailing, or were there many kind of battles that you had to fight for the next generation to be able to come through?
Yeah, there was definitely battles. I mean, initially, I actually didn't get much work in the first few months because I was apparently so affiliated to H&M that other brands were like, we'll work with you in the future, because it's just too competitive, even though I hadn't signed any contracts that was saying, you know, this is an exclusive thing, or I got a great payout. Nothing like that. It was just the press around it was insane. And also I think because I wasn't obviously like a conventional traditional model, it was like, okay, you know, we're looking at me in a different kind of light, and that did actually negatively affect some opportunities. And I found myself doing way more consultancy and behind the scenes work than actually like working as a traditional model. And that for me was obviously a challenge, because it's like as the owner said, you know, it's time for you to spread your wings. It's like I'm spreading my wings, but there's no money coming in. So that was really tough. And a lot of people, I think, from the outside, you know, would see me, you know, doing all these interviews, flying around. You know, there's a lot of press, but not actual work as a model. And that's when I started to feel like, was this just a one-off thing? Was this a gimmick? Is this actually real? But then slowly, obviously, other models that wore hijab as well came into the industry, and I said, okay, so this is a thing. This did create an impact to change, but it's still very tokenistic. It's like one at a time, guys. You know, we've got one hijabi for this brand. We don't need another. We've got one for this. And that's probably a challenge I think is still existing today. It's still very much like one at a time. We don't need more than one of you, basically. And I've been told by brands even, you know, we'll get in touch when it's Ramadan, or, you know, when it's relevant, where we want to push something Muslim. But, you know, I wear hijab all year round. It's not a seasonal thing. So there is still ongoing challenges, but it's definitely been different over the years, which is good. There's been change.
And is there any challenge in balancing, like, obviously you wear hijab for your own spirituality. It's not because anybody specific told you to. It's not because you want to have a certain look in a campaign, right? It's about you and your values and your beliefs. And obviously, therefore, that's something you can't compromise on. But if you do get any sense of like tokenism, or what is accepted within your community or outside of your community, of the behavior of a hijabi, do you ever feel kind of tension in that space of being able to be your professional self and your private self?
Yes, because I guess everyone has their own idea. I mean, it's normal. We're all somewhat judgmental. So everyone has their own judgments and ideas on you know, how they see someone and what they expect from that. And so with me, it's like, obviously working in the mainstream world, it's not like I'm in just the Muslim community. So I've got those, you know, all those eyes, but then also my own community as well, and trying to, I guess, balance that. But I'll be honest, I say trying to balance it, but I don't. I just genuinely, this is me. And I think there are so many people who feel like myself anyway. So in a way, it's just, I guess, just representing a lot of people in my position who are genuinely just being themselves and not overthinking, do I have to be like this for this group? Do I have to be like that? It's easier to just recognize that so many people are in your position, and yeah, you're good just being yourself.
What about you, Susannah? Do you think that you've always been able to be, and certainly now are able to be yourself and still achieve your professional goals in the sporting world?
Yeah, it's I thought about this quite a lot recently, because from there's like the sporting Susannah, then there's the non-sporting Susannah, and I've always found that I've been very similar sort of throughout, or I've tried to be anyway. And like with anything, when you're playing well, when you're doing well, you want to be known as the sports person, but then when you're not, you want to be known as the person away from your sport. And being very honest, I've sometimes struggled to find an actual sort of good balance with that. But I think of, so my nickname at hockey was Towner, and Towner was the fun one, the funny one, the one that would always make people laugh. And I decided to, during the, what was it, from 2016 to 2017, to almost be the more serious person. I was an older person in the squad. I wasn't a youngster anymore. And I thought, look, as you go up in a sort of a team, sort of a hierarchy system, which my team really wasn't, I thought, be that serious person. I was rubbish. I played terribly. My whole personality went. I wasn't myself at all, but I felt I had to conform in that way, because that's how I'd seen society from people before me be. And I remember one teammate saying to me, I did it for about a year, I think, and on and off, saying, oh, thank goodness the real Towner's back. And actually, it was brilliant to hear, but it made me a little bit upset, because I thought, why not just tell me in the first place that they're the strengths that I bring, that those attributes, by me literally being my silly, authentic self at times, actually had such a benefit for the team. And I think of me sort of coming out, and I had a whole career of being Susannah with a boyfriend, then being Susannah with a girlfriend. And this was with the same people going through. And I had a really positive experience actually within my team, where everyone simply accepted me for me. And I never really had a coming out story, because I turned up one day and said, look, I've got a girlfriend. But I'm very aware that I was in a very fortunate position where I had a very supporting family, that I felt I could be my authentic self. And I know that that's not the case everywhere else. But it's not to say that it's been plain sailing all the time. But I made a promise to myself from that point in 2017 to always be me. And I hope, and I try to stick to that. And I align myself with people and partners that hopefully align with that as well. And that if I don't stand by that, they now call me out on it, which is exceptionally important to me.
And Vicky, you know, whether you're a PA or whether you're a professional organizer to somebody else, you're basically trying to tap into a little part of that person. You're all about thinking about that person and how you help them, how you help them mentally, how you help them physically. I think everybody watching this as members of the Marketing Academy would have been used to thinking about, like, what's the insight? Who's the audience? Who are we talking to? We're serving these other people. And it can be very easy to suppress or lose part of yourself, I think, in that context. Mm-hmm. How have you been able, while making sure that you're doing a great job for them, also to be you, like for your own sanity as much as anything else?
Yeah, do you know what? That's really, really interesting. So we go, you know, as part of my job, you go into a different person's home every single day of the week. And you never know who is going to be behind that door. Are they going to be anxious? Are they going to be excited? Are they going to be worried, scared, happy? Are they going to be grieving? Are they going to be, you know, grieving over death or grieving over a partner or, you know, gone through a divorce? Like, there are so many people and situations that we turn up to. And what I found moving from PA, where I was working for someone, to being the professional organizer, you know, the owner of the business, where I could go in as me. Honestly, it was just the most empowering moment and time for me to discover that I could adapt myself in order to make that person who I was greeting feel happy, feel safe, feel comfortable. I knew I could help boost their well-being. I knew I could make them feel better. But just by being me, actually. And obviously that means different if it's someone on a Monday, and I might need to adapt myself slightly for the person on a Thursday, you know, depending on how they are and how they work and what things doing and what they've been through. But yeah, I mean, the experiences over the last 13 years of people I've worked for have been, I mean, it's been an utter honour to work for some of the people, what they've been through. Like, yeah, it's been amazing. But yeah, I've found it extremely empowering over the last 13 years to actually find a job that I can go in, be me. That's good enough. That's liked. I haven't had to double check with anyone or ask anyone anything. And that's what I needed. And yeah, that's been the best bit about it, really. So challenges wise, I think there were more challenges about being a business owner of a business that nobody knew what I was talking about when I was talking about it, but less about suddenly being able to be me and sort of present myself and say, this is me. But I've never felt so me as when I started a business I knew I'd love doing. I feel really lucky like that.
So let's talk about being women, because the thing is, of what we've discussed so far, you know, what you just described, Vicky, that could be true of a male entrepreneur as well. Mm. Susannah, you were talking about kind of, if I use the analogy in sport of like being the shirt more than being the person underneath the shirt at times when you're playing. That also happens to men in the sports industry. Mm. Maria, it's also evident, like we all work with people where you meet men from underrepresented groups, or even specifically from the Muslim community, where they also feel like on occasion they're deployed quite tokenistically, whether intentionally or not. But what about being women? I'm going to come back to you, Vicky. Like, there's a big thing, isn't there, of men can have it all and women can't. Now, you are the mum, the solo mum of an adopted daughter. How do you balance both those parts of your life? But also, how do people react when you say, I'm an entrepreneur, I've got my own business, I'm also a solo mum?
Yeah, do you know what? It's usually a reaction that I love, which is fascination, I'd say, especially about the adoption, and interest, which is all I could ask for to spread the word on something as amazing as adoption, to be honest. That's what I want. That's the reactions I get. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's lots of inappropriate questions also when you tell someone that you've adopted. And I think, wow, no, I'm not going to answer those actually. But yeah, positive. I think that there's quite a lot of is empathy the right word? Because being a parent is really hard, but being a solo parent is even harder. It is, you know, financially it's on you, mentally it's on you, physically it's on you, the whole thing's on you. You don't get a break, and I think there's a level of understanding with that. I think to summarize, I think people are almost not impressed, but I suppose interested in how do I navigate it? And the answer is like this huge juggle that doesn't always work, that's for sure. But yeah, I think I've had honestly a really positive reaction when I tell people. Yeah, fascination, I think.
And what about you, Susannah? Moving beyond your shirt, which will always have your name and number on it, and everybody will be absolutely delighted that you represented our country because you did it handsomely. Moving out of being an elite athlete into the rest of your life and career, how do you feel as a woman you've been able to navigate that transition? And do you feel you faced obstacles that maybe a male athlete wouldn't have done?
How long have you got? It is, do you know what? People talk to you about the transition from sport, and male and females, they all experience this. However, I very openly, I do feel it's a little bit harder as a woman. And for my own experiences, this isn't on, I can't give you research papers or anything like that. This is just purely from my own personal experiences. And I think I've been so grateful to play a sport that I absolutely love my entire life. And I've been very privileged to get a degree, to do lots of stuff alongside it. However, you go from being at the top of your field to the bottom of someone else's wherever you go. And mentally, that's a really tough thing to do. And I've seen in a parallel way men who haven't won gold medals, who haven't won bronze medals, finish sport and get these top jobs. And actually the biggest thing, and I'm not criticizing just society, I'm also criticizing myself. Have I been bold enough to go into a room and say, this is what I'm worth, this is my value? And I probably haven't. And I do look at society and how that's sort of come across for years and years and years as to why. And I've asked myself, why do I do that? Why do I almost put myself down? Because internally I do back myself, but being able to say it out loud, I find very, very difficult. And I've looked at males in a very, very similar situation get what they simply deserve. And I don't feel, and this isn't a sob story or anything like that, but I don't feel like I've valued myself enough to go in and actually say the exact same thing that someone from a male background would. So it's something that I'm certainly learning about myself recently. And I had a really interesting call with a retired rugby player, a guy called Phil Burrows, and he's a sevens rugby player. And he said to me exactly that. He said, just remember your value. Yes, you haven't got that experience in this, but all of the skills that you've got from sport, they are going to set you up to thrive. And a good employer and good people will understand that. And he just said, keep reminding yourself of it, because as athletes, you get setbacks all the time. You don't get selected. You get feedback all the time that's not very good. So we're used to that. But actually, in this context, leaving sport, it's a hell of a lot harder because you're not used to it. So it's something that I do think women need to empower women about, and we need to keep reminding each other that we are brilliant and that we add so much value in everything that we do. And I'm not saying walk into a room and be a man, but at the same time, it's walk into a room and remember how valued we are and how good we are at what we do, and have the confidence to say it. And that is certainly something that I'm continuing to work on now.
Yeah, and it's really tricky, isn't it? And I think there were statistics only last week that came out about the fact that only 10% of executive roles in football are held by women. And after the success of the Lionesses and after the growth of women's football, it's really easy to see progress. And I always champion progress, right? Progress is everything. That's the incremental steps. But it's really easy to see progress as, right, we've done it. But that's not necessarily the case, you know? Mariah being the world's first hijabi model is great, but it's also about what's next, and what's next in terms of female empowerment. And I kind of bring the same question to you, Mariah. Do you think anything would have been easier or just different if you were a guy, albeit you would have still been from an underrepresented group?
Yeah, I mean, I think with me, there's one layer, obviously, of just my faith and morals, and looking at that aspect, but then also physically, like visibly, what I wear on my head, I can't like put it on and off. Whereas as a man, you know, you don't have to wear a physical hijab. They still have a concept of one in terms of modesty, but it's not as literal as a material, which in some ways it can obviously limit opportunities. But I try to focus on like all the tons of things that I can do. So I definitely know that, yeah, there would be more opportunities for me to be able to be part of if I didn't wear it, just generally, whether I was still a woman not wearing it or whether I was a Muslim man. But I quite like, because being a creative, you can get overwhelmed with so many ideas. It feels like a burden just on your shoulders, like all these things that you wanna do. So for me, actually, it streamlines a lot of the stuff that I should focus on, because I know that there's these, say, limitations for, I can't think of another word, but yeah.
And it's funny, isn't it, in terms of representation in the media, because even where you see progress, because in a dramatization there may be a hijabi character, that's often rarely played by a hijabi, because you'll see them at home without their hijab on. Yes. And so no one who actually wore one could play that character.
Yeah, and that's the other thing as well, which is why I've taken, again, more of a backseat into looking at writing. I mean, like I said, my entry, I guess, into the creative space was really like writing anyway, poetry, but acting, drama. It was just in that space, and I had to pause the drama side because I was like, oh, well, you know, I wear a hijab. There's like one role going every decade. And even then, like you said, there's going to be a scene in the film where, oh, she has to take it off to get in the shower or something, whatever it is. So for me, like now, I feel like it's for us to take initiative and start writing the roles that we want to see and actually make it a thing where, you know, imagine having a feature film where there is a character who wears a hijab in real life and never has to remove it, you know, in the film, because there's so many ways around it. I've done it, and I've done it in fashion. There's been ads where it's like nighttime routine, and it's like, well, it says that I jump into bed, I don't wear a headscarf to go to sleep. So we've just got to be really creative in the way that we edit it, so, you know, we don't have to show that. So if we can do it in making ads campaigns, I'm surely we can do it in film as well.
Yeah, I think, you know, writing your own roles, creating your own business is a theme coming out. I'm going to come to one thing, because I hope that there's lots of guys watching this. I hope that they don't think International Women's Day is a thing for women, and massive kudos to any guy that is tuned into this. So I'm going to take a moment to talk about allyship and how important it is in any situation, not just one of gender empowerment, that actually you have people who aren't from the group who are fighting for additional representation or a more powerful voice supporting what you're saying. And I wondered if any of you have brilliant examples of when there's been a guy that stood kind of shoulder to shoulder with you in something you want to achieve and helped you on the way, or given you advice, or not opened a physical door but a metaphorical door for you. I don't know who would want to go first, because I put you a little bit on the spot, but I'm sure everyone's got an example.
I mean, I could
carry on.
Off the back of what I was talking about in film and drama and stuff, Isla, who's part of GVO as well, our family. So he has been writing, directing, producing. Similarly, there's a lot of roles because of he's Muslim, so his own morals and values that he couldn't do. So he felt the need to start writing and creating his own content. And plus, just being in film, regardless of race, gender, background, it's a tough space. And like that was a big opportunity, because he already set up this platform and just said, look, Mariah, if you've got any ideas, you know, we've got the team, we'll make it and we'll put it out there. So I would definitely say he's been a great ally.
Trying to think of an example. To be honest, it's for me. I think, and I adore hockey. I love hockey, because when I look at it from just a very plain point of view, it is actually very equal. And it's not just the reason I love it, but it really is. And in terms of, you think of like big football teams, for example, you have your Chelsea football team, women and men, who train at the same place, but you have another football team in the Premier League where they have a different training ground with a shed for the women to get changed in. Whereas hockey, it is very equal. We're there. If you win more medals, you get paid more money. If you don't, you're on a lesser income. It's very, very simple. And I can't think of any pure examples right now, but even the fact that when you're rehabbing, when you've got a bad knee and you're in the training gym and you're training with the men, and then men have different skill levels. We're all different hockey players, but you go on the pitch and you do your return to hockey with them, and they're empowering you to be better, but we're also empowering them to be better. And you think of it in another context, and I think of it, if I relate it to, and I will say football, imagine that ever happening in football. A man and a woman from the same club rehabbing and training together. It just wouldn't happen. Whereas in hockey, we are equal. This is what we do. We're all trying to get back on the pitch and be better hockey players. Therefore, we will all train with each other. And for me, I think of allyship as not necessarily these big grand gestures or these big things that happen. It's a constant through our language, through what we say every single day, for how we behave, for little examples like that continue to empower everyone, and not just necessarily women as well.
And for me, I think there has been many times, actually, whether they've been clients or mainly clients, I'd say, just where men have offered advice, offered sort of some basic mentoring, especially at the beginning of my business when I genuinely had no idea what I was doing, you know, from a business perspective. blagging my way through is the only saying I can come to. But, you know, because you're learning so much as you go along, you haven't done it before. And back then, definitely, you know, men that I knew and had met were really open and offered advice and help whenever I'd have needed it. I could have picked up the phone at any point, definitely to a selected few people for sure, which I loved. I thought was great.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say I was in a situation once where I was promoted into a job that was going to be identical to a guy's job, although he did have significantly more years experience than me. And I was very worried about the gender pay gap, which I'm sure everyone's seen has actually increased again, unbelievably.
Has it?
But yeah, the most recent statistics, it's got bigger, not smaller. I was very worried about it. And he just turned around and said, we're doing the same job, we'll co-negotiate our contracts, they'll be identical. We'll just open them so that word for word, they're identical. We'll negotiate it together, we'll make sure we're happy together, that's what we'll do. And he didn't seem to think anything of it, which probably why he was the sort of person that would do that. But it made a huge difference to me. And it also not only made a difference to me personally, but actually gave me a platform that enabled me, hopefully, to be a role model for more women in the organisation and to feel equally valued to him. But I think the thing that's come out across all of that is about teamwork, right? And it's a bit like you guys, and we come back to the theme. You can be so different. And like we said, the differences are more interesting than the similarities, but there's also this core value set where if you meet anyone from any background, whoever they are, if you share values, you will be able to work together and support each other. But one of the things I want to come on to is we've talked a lot about being women, which is a point of visible diversity generally. But there's also a lot to talk about around intersectionality. And we've discussed this a bit with Maria around religion, although obviously her hijab does, again, give a sense of visible diversity. But, you know, Vicky, you've spoken openly about having ADHD. Susannah, you talk a lot about gay rights. These are things that you don't have to talk about. Like Maria, there are experiences in your life as well that you share to empower younger women that you just don't have to. And, you know, I've been to brilliant talks before where people have said, almost the visible elements of diversity are the ones that you have to battle through because you're going to be called out on them anyway. How do you get the impetus to still have that kind of slightly warrior, pioneering spirit when it's things that you don't have to reveal about yourself and you know could lead to challenging situations? I'm going to start with you, Susannah.
So I being very openly gay. I don't know why I had to add the very. Being openly gay, I've gone about it in a way that I have genuinely thought, look, if I'm happy, people will be happy around me, and that's how the world should almost work. But having said that, I've gone through phases. I was on a panel once, and they were like, "Can you describe yourself in pronouns?" And I know what a pronoun is, but I've really struggled to almost just say, this is what I am, because to me, I'm just Susannah. I really am just Susannah to everyone that knows me, whether I'm she, her, cisgender, everything. And then what annoyed me at the time was I was like, I barely know what to say. How am I expecting all of you to know what to say? And I think lots of people, the biggest thing for me in this is that people get it wrong and people say the wrong things. But that's okay. That's absolutely okay, because as long as you call them up on it, as long as you or an ally or someone corrects them and does it in a way that's not in an argumentative sense, unless it's obviously a manipulative attack on someone, then actually it's okay. And that's how we actually create change. And I've had examples where I've said the wrong thing, where I've done the wrong thing, not through any malice whatsoever, but actually just being very, very ignorant. And for me, being so open, I've also struggled with, I had the pride flag on my Twitter handle. I don't know if I still do, or even on my Instagram handle. And I took it off for a bit. And one of my best friends was like, but why have you taken it off? And I said, well, I just don't want to continue to be labelled. I'm just Susannah, the girl that chases a ball around a hockey pitch. And she flipped it and she said, yes, but Susannah, some young girl, some young boy, whoever, they look at it and they see how open you are. and how happy you are. And that gives them maybe a little bit of hope that that's where they'll get to. And I put it back on because I thought, okay, well, actually, this isn't about me. This is so much bigger than me. And why do I continue to talk so openly? Because I think you're allowing people to see that it's normal. All we want to do is create normality in the world. All we want to do is stop people's heads turning in a street when you're holding someone's hand. I had a girlfriend once who would always drop my hand when she saw an older couple. And I remember saying, look, I understand why you're doing it, but have you thought about how that makes me feel? And that's why for me, as soon as I enter a new relationship, as soon as I'm talking to my family, I make sure that I am very, very, very true to myself and how I live. And I think through everything, think about everything that we do, through actually having positive examples and setting positive examples in how we live, people see that, and then people hopefully then can create their own path by feeling comfortable. And all we want is for people to feel comfortable being themselves. So if there's ever a platform for me to talk about it, I always will. And we can all sit here today actually and say that sometimes we're actually not that comfortable talking about it because we just want us to sometimes be known for what we're successful for. We also understand that we're in a position of privilege, really, where we're able to have a voice and speak about it. And whether that helps 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 people, then we're sort of doing our jobs, and that's our responsibility as well. So I'm a firm believer that if we have a voice, then certainly use it.
Vicky?
Yeah, so there's 2 things I suppose that I sort of speak out about that, you know, one is definitely the ADHD thing, although I'm very new to it. I'm sort of 6 months into diagnosis. And I don't think it ever even crossed my mind not to talk about it, because just the thought of someone else relating to it and then having a conversation with me, which has happened so much on Instagram, I actually can't believe it. And I probably only put about 3 posts up about it. And then people having a conversation, and then you relating to them and sort of saying, oh, this is hard, isn't it? And do you get this? And have you had this? It's like, yeah. And do you have this? Is this one of your traits? And, you know, it's such a fascinating subject now that I'm so into it, and I'm definitely in a sort of as much of a positive way as I can be. And that's the bit I think that I like the thought of spreading amongst people that I talk to about it, you know, because it really is a wave, the whole ADHD thing. For me, it has been. It's like, you feel good about it, bad about it, good about it, bad about it. You know, it's negative, it's positive, it's negative, it's positive. But to speak openly about it, certainly, I don't feel like can do anything bad, that's for sure. And with the adoption as well. I remember someone saying to me once, you know, someone who I sort of hang out with quite a lot, and they said, you know, you don't have to say to people that, you know, she's adopted. And I say, because it wasn't like I was telling everyone I met, but, you know, certain people, there were conversations that would come up, like in the park or wherever. And I said, I'd say, actually, no, I adopted her. And it would be relevant to the conversation. You know, someone's just about to ask me what my birth was like, or someone's just about to ask me how many children I've got, or something like that. It was relevant. And I just thought, I thought about it, and I really analysed that comment. And I was like, oh, shouldn't I be? And then I was like, no, I should be, because the reactions I was getting from some people were almost like they wanted to run away. It was so interesting. And then the reactions I was getting from other people were really chatty and open and honest. And I thought, well, there's only one way to make people feel more comfortable when they have that kind of reaction where they want to run or hide under a table, or they just don't know what to say. And that is talking about it more, making it more sort of normalized and whatever, you know, the correct wording that I should be using. But, you know, that's why I love being open about both those subjects, both of those. Yeah, for sure, passionately.
And how about you, Maria? Beyond the visible elements of what people can make assumptions about you, whether they're entirely accurate or not, how comfortable do you feel, and how comfortable have people made you feel about sharing what's important to you that they might not know about?
Do you know what? I think I can be quite oblivious sometimes. I mean, I'd like to think I have, you know, a high emotional intelligence, but because when I talk about myself, I feel like, well, it shouldn't offend anyone, or it shouldn't make people feel uncomfortable. So I just like, blah. I just feel comfortable expressing myself. And And I don't mind also people asking questions. I encourage it. I'm not one of those people where I want you to feel awkward if you're asking me where am I like really from and things like that. I have no, that's just me personally speaking for myself. I'm open to all of that. So the more comfortable that I think I am in myself, I hope that it makes other people more comfortable as well. Because, at the end of the day, like, I appreciate even, if you live in a community where it's not very diverse and you see someone like me and then the only things you've heard about people who look like me is negative, I would rather you confront me and actually have a conversation, even if to someone else next to me it sounds so ignorant or racist or whatever. I'm like, it's fine. I'd rather be confronted than, we're all acting a bit cagey and then behind my back, your views or whatever it is hasn't changed at all on like a Muslim woman. So I try to, again, be very open and comfortable because I don't have a problem. If anything, I prefer to keep, I guess, like my private life private. So like family and things like that. But in terms of faith, my personality, my interests, like me as a person, I'm comfortable being open and encouraging people as well to be open with me.
But it's still massive kudos to all of you, because it's still parts of you that you can't and don't want to change, right? That you're making vulnerable to other people. And, I know I've been in situations where I've said to a boss that my mom's not very well and my dad's her carer and it's not something I particularly want to talk about. And then in a situation where I may have a difference of opinion with that boss, that's then been thrown back in my face, that maybe I'm disagreeing because I'm feeling emotional, not actually just because I'm a woman, but because maybe I'm worried about my mum and I'm going, nothing's gone wrong with my mum, I've just got a different opinion. But if you make these things vulnerable to someone and they get thrown back at you, that can become very, very uncomfortable. So I personally think that it's very brave of anyone that puts everything out there so that other people also feel that they can learn and that they can share and be their true selves. So I guess we're going to wrap up, but I've got one more question. It's about kind of about being role models, but also generally just about inspiring other people. Because I think we talk a lot about the next generation, and as women, you talk a lot about younger women and them being able to do everything. But I think actually you can inspire your peers, you can inspire older women. One of my favorite things about mentoring is the element of like reverse mentoring you get, where I get to tell them all the stuff I've got wrong in my entire career. And they go, well, that's a relief. And so I've learned a lot more from all those mistakes than anything I got right. And in exchange, they come along to learn from me and teach me something invaluable that I can take into the next day. So I think, like, what are the lessons that you've learned that for women or men of any age you think are most important in terms of being able to be your true self and be successful in your professional life at the same time?
I'm going to keep mine quite simple. I had actually had a terrible therapist once, but she gave me one little bit of advice, and that actually made a lot of sense. And I thought about this because I honestly try and think about this in every single situation. So, Katie, for example, your example earlier about your mum and your dad, and this sort of relates to that as well. And for me, it's treat every situation like you're watching a sunset, because no sunset is the same. So go into it with an open mind and literally see what is in front of your eyes. Don't go in with any predetermined thoughts, actions. Just see exactly what's in front of you, because we're all at fault through things happening in our lives or past experiences, past trauma, past happiness, anything, that we have these ideas in our mind of how things should go. But to keep it really simple, just treat every single situation like a sunset, and like you're seeing it for the first time as its own entity, and then go from there.
Do you know what? This is like more of a recent, I guess, epiphany I've had. And it's so cheesy, but it's to actually believe in myself, because I guess sometimes I confuse confidence with self-belief, because there's areas where you could be super confident in, and then areas not so much, which is normal. But having self-belief, it's like a different thing in itself, because just within the work that I do now, because I feel like maybe I haven't proven myself more in film, there's been this like a bit of imposter syndrome and me limiting myself because no one else has no reason to not believe in me. And it was almost like an external thing where I'm blaming it on everything else, but actually it was to do with me. So I guess the piece of advice I would say, which and it actually was my mum who said, "You sound like you don't believe in yourself." And I was like, oh my God, I was like, how dare you? Have you seen what I've built over the last, 8 years? But actually, despite what I can physically see I've achieved and I'm confident in, there was areas where I just genuinely didn't realize I actually didn't believe in myself and felt like I had to prove myself, and everyone's blagging it. So yeah, everyone seems to be winging it, and I wanted to just do things. So if I had to leave anything, it would be truly, truly like believe in yourself, and everyone else will.
And I think for me, I really relate to what you said about Katie, about when you learn so much from the things you do wrong. And I say to my team so much, please listen to what I'm saying, because believe me, everything I'm teaching you is because I've done it wrong and I've learned the hard way. So you will have my going wrong story in your heads every time you're at work going, oh, we can't do it like this. I remember Vicky told us that story about how badly it went wrong, and that's like 13 years of work. But also I think advice wise, for me, I think there's so much about gut feeling. Like for me, if I'd have actually listened to people when I was thinking of starting my business, seeing all the oh, I'm thinking of starting a professional organising business. What's that? Oh, do you really think people will like it? Or do you think that would do any good? If I'd have actually listened to them, I don't know what I'd be doing right now, but I don't believe that I'd have been as fulfilled as I am, as when I started the business, as starting this business and, living this business. So I think there's a lot of going with your gut feeling, and also sort of related, but people don't have to like what you do or even have to like you. That's okay. Not everybody's going to like us. Not everyone's going to like what we do. And I think coming to terms with the fact, learning, that's okay. Dance to the beat of your own drums and just kind of live it and do it anyway. And it takes a lot of strength to get to the point where you can actually live that. But to have it in your head as you're going, I think is a really empowering thought and feeling.
Oh, it's amazing. I think it's great. It's a great way to start off International Women's Day. And on the topic of this webinar on International Women's Day, I think, not that anyone asked, but I'm going to use the stage while I've got it. For me, it's all about following your heart. And many times people have said to me, oh wow, like you've been campaigning for inclusivity across this and this area for 15 years. Like how forward thinking? How did you know what was coming in the industry? And the only answer has been, I had no idea. Like I grew up in a world where, to your point, Vicky, my mum was adopted, her brother was fostered, my grandma was in a wheelchair. Like most of my friends weren't white. My dance partner was gay, and he and I gossiped about which boys we both liked. Like that was my world. That was normal. And it was when I went out and I discovered the world wasn't like that, I thought, wow, I could let everybody else in on this world. Where everyone is so much happier because you're all just one family. And I guess that's how we've all ended up together on this webinar today. I really hope that lots of people have enjoyed it. I know everyone would be delighted if you wanted to reach out, at You Need a Vicky, S Townsend 7, Mariah Idrissi. If you want to contact any of them, they will definitely get back to you. I've got nothing interesting to say. Don't
lies, you do.
And just thank you so much. I'd give you a round of applause, but it might seem a bit sarcastic if it's just me. So, I'm going to hand back to Emma.
Brilliant. Wow, what a session. I was hooked the whole way through. I'm sure everybody else was. Some amazing, amazing stories and lessons and hints and tips. And thank you, Katie, for facilitating. And thank you, ladies, for your time, your energy and your inspirational words. So we hope everyone at home enjoyed the session, and we will see you on the virtual campus very soon. Thanks, ladies.